Welcome to today's episode of Redundancy Matters. I'm June Hogan. I'm a qualified career coach. I'm an outplacement specialist and I've got a background in HR. And I'm the founder of outplacement services provider Wildwood Coaching. So today I'm doing a solo episode on a topic which can be something which lots of HR professionals find themselves facing as we enter the year end. That can be a time when lots of companies are focusing on their financial year end, for example, and making difficult decisions around restructuring and potential redundancies. So I wanted to record this episode, something I haven't covered before, which is all about concluding redundancies. Now, clearly this isn't legal advice, it's simply guidance, and if you do need to seek legal advice, then you'll need to do that via an employment lawyer. But what I want to do today is to give you an overview of the things that you can be considering before that final meeting, during the meeting, and also after the meeting. So I hope this episode is helpful, practical, and useful for those of you who are facing redundancy consultation final meetings. So in terms of the things to do before that final meeting, depending on how long the consultation period has been, it could be a while since you had a consultation meeting. So it's important to go back, look at the notes from previous meetings, confirm all the queries, questions, and any representations had really been fully addressed. And also, if there's suitable employment options available, you need to make sure that those have been genuinely explored and communicated to the individuals. One important thing to consider as well is to confirm that no new information has come to light during the consultation period and since the last consultation meeting. Any new information that you have needs to be fully considered before you can arrange that final meeting and confirm redundancy. Something to check as well is redundancy pay calculations. So those will need to be prepared before the meeting and checked. If you're offering statutory or any enhancements, those will need to be checked because maybe there's been an anniversary, a work anniversary, or a birthday, for example, since the consultation started. And also to ensure that you have double-checked notice periods, holiday pay entitlement, any benefit entitlement as well. So really making sure that all of those technical details are up to date and ready to be included in that final meeting. As with any consultation meeting, it's important to prepare the structure for the meeting. So have a template ready and outline the different elements of the meeting. Maybe have a script if you feel that that's helpful, particularly for line managers who may be doing this on their own, for example, or inexperienced line managers. And I'll put a link to another episode that I've recorded about preparing line managers for consultation meetings in case that's helpful. It's really important to coach your line managers to deliver that message with empathy, to encourage them to practice the wording, to practice what they're going to say, to be familiar with the structure that you've outlined for them, to understand where they might be wanting to pause, for example, maintain eye contact with the individual, and really make sure that they are fully ready and that they themselves don't have any outstanding questions about the information they're being required to deliver. Importantly, when you invite the individual to the consultation meeting, you'll need to make sure that they are offered the right to representation, whether that be trade union rep or colleague. And also when you're planning the timing for the meetings, they do need to have adequate time. So I would recommend a minimum of 30 minutes and also ensure that if the meetings are face-to-face, that they are somewhere private. And if they're online, again, you're not going to be in the middle of an open plan office conducting those. So lots of things to consider before the meeting, just to make sure that everyone has the information that they need. The line manager is feeling prepared and ready, and all the information is at your fingertips to deliver in the meeting. During the meeting itself, so opening up the meeting as you would any consultation meeting, I'll also put a link in the show notes to a free download which I have, which talks about how to prepare for consultation meetings and the different elements and outlines a redundancy consultation meeting checklist, if that might be helpful. So really opening up the meeting at the start, giving a brief recap of consultation, so kind of going over where you started, where you've come from, going back to the rationale, that's important as well, just to make sure the individuals understand again and reinforce the rationale for why redundancies have come about in the first place. And just to talk through the consultation process to date, check the understanding with the individual. So they may raise some outstanding questions, for example, or they may raise new information in the meeting. Now, if that's the case, it's really important to pause the meeting and adjourn rather than just sort of bat that information off or kind of overlook it or dismiss it, for example. You really do need to go away and take an adjournment. Now, depending on what the new information is, you might need to reschedule the meeting because this is still part of a consultation process and therefore meaningful consultation needs to take place. So just be prepared for that in case that happens and ensure, again, if you're coaching line managers because you won't be with them in the meeting, then they need to be aware that that's what they'll need to do if new information or any questions or anything like that comes up before they are delivering the outcome in the meeting. If you've been looking at alternative employment, for example, you'll need to confirm that no suitable role was found, or maybe there were roles, but the individual declined them. And then to deliver the outcome verbally, that redundancy is proceeding, and then importantly, talk about those next steps. The right of appeal is something that you'll need to cover off in the meeting and outline the process at kind of a high level and the time frame and the person that the individual would need to get in contact with if they do want to make an appeal. And you'd also confirm that in the redundancy letter as well. To confirm the notice arrangements and clarify whether the individual is going to need to work their notice, whether they might be going on garden leave, or whether you're able to pay in lieu of notice and therefore confirming the effective termination date. For some colleagues, you might have restrictive covenants or confidentiality arrangements in place. So that's something that you would need to confirm in the meeting, but also have addressed up front to ensure that you're able to deliver what that means for the individual in light of redundancy. There's going to be the things like payroll and administration. So as I talked before about making sure that you've got the redundancy pay calculation. So you go through that with the individual. You'd confirm when the final salary and the payment dates for that are going to be made, break down the holiday pay, explain how they'll be sent a P45, and also when their IT access ends, because for lots of companies, they will be using electronic payslips, for example, and individuals will probably want to have access to those and to be able to download them before they leave for their own personal records. So that's just something to be aware of and to add into the meeting so individuals have got adequate time to make the arrangements that they need while their IT access is still in force. References are important to people, so explaining the standard company reference process and again the contact details, you'll be confirming all of this in writing, but it's helpful to confirm it in the meeting so individuals know it's covered off. They might have some questions about that. If you're offering outplacement support, then explain what that is, that you'll be sharing the details, how individuals can access that. And also, depending on your notice arrangements and what you've confirmed with the individual, if they're going to be working the notice, for example, then they do have reasonable time off to look for work during that time. It's also important to signpost to wellbeing and other support. So signpost the individual to your EAP, or perhaps you've got counselling or other internal wellbeing resources. And also to signpost to external resources, for example, the Department of Work and Pensions. You're going to want to share details of your pension provider if that's relevant for the individual, and then explain the arrangements for returning any equipment. For those colleagues with company cars, how does that work? Because that's something practically that they're going to need to make arrangements to do. And something that I think is really important as well is to ask how they would like to communicate this to their colleagues and their team. Everyone will be different, but sometimes I think that can be overlooked because the individual might want you to communicate that to their colleagues. They might want to do it themselves. So just ask them how they would like that communicated and bring them into the process. And importantly, ensure that the meeting includes that personal thank you for their contribution and offer of support outside of the meeting if they need anything. As with all of the consultation meetings, this isn't the only time that someone can ask questions or indeed talk to their line manager or HR manager. So making that meeting, yes, there are procedural things that you need to go through in order for it to cover off the legal aspects, but there's also the person-centered aspects as well, and ensuring that the individual has that recognition for their contribution, and they, even in a difficult situation like this, they do feel valued, listened to and heard. For senior colleagues, it may be that you are issuing a company-wide communication, for example. And again, you'll need to involve the senior colleagues in that so that they can decide whether they want to tell their team just before that communication goes out, for example, or is it after. But it's an important part of the process that people want to be able to say their goodbyes and, importantly, to have some closure to the process. And then after the meeting, you'll need to confirm all of this in writing. So in the redundancy confirmation letter, the dismissal reason, and obviously the date, the notice arrangements, the breakdown of the payment, talk about the appeal process, and include a contact within the HR team for any queries. You'll need to re-emphasise the wellbeing support and outplacement support, for example. And again, just as you've done in the meeting, ensure that it's as much as possible. And I appreciate with people dealing with large redundancy consultations, this can be trickier, but it does need to be a letter which strikes a personal tone with the individual so they don't feel like they've just kind of been processed. So including that acknowledgement for their contribution again. And really importantly, encouraging the line manager to have a follow-up call or a meeting with the individual just to check in with them afterwards, just to see how they are, what support they might need between now and when they're leaving the organisation, and to confirm practical things like handover arrangements, for example. So there's lots of things to consider in that final meeting, and I hope that's given you an overview of some of the things that you probably already have on your list, but maybe there are some things there that you hadn't thought about. And I think it's really important when you're pulling all of this together to consider not just the procedural aspects to ensure that the process is fair and legally compliant, but you're also maintaining that notion that this is an individual, this is someone whose livelihood has now been confirmed that is going to be terminating by reason of redundancy, and that information is going to land differently for many people. For some people, it might be a relief if they've been going through a process that's been quite long, for example. For other people, it's going to be devastating. And for other people, it might be the chance to move on and, be the start of a new chapter. They might be receiving the news positively. You really don't know. And it's important to have that open mind when you are going into those meetings and being prepared to deal with however the individual reacts. So I'll put a link in the show notes to some other episodes that, if you haven't already listened to them, will be helpful to you to help prepare yourself and the line managers for those consultation meetings, to lead them with empathy and ensure people remain at the heart of the process. Thank you so much for listening to the Redundancy Matters podcast. I hope you found today's episode helpful. It would mean a lot to me if you would follow, rate and review this podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts, as this helps it reach more people who are managing redundancies. Let me know what you thought, and if you have ideas for future episodes, I'd love to hear from you. You can find me on LinkedIn, June Hogan, and get in touch via my website, wildwoodcoaching.co.uk, where you'll also find more resources to help you manage redundancies. I hope you'll join me again soon for the next episode of Redundancy Matters.